in the book of James. We probably have a couple, 2, 3 more, and we'll start in Ephesians. I couldn't help but notice a stark contrast, and I'll be honest, my heart is heavy with this passage. There was a stark contrast from our music this morning to what I feel like I have to share in this text. Our music was rousing and encouraging, but we were looking back at the work of Jesus in several different places. His death, his resurrection, all of those parts were mentioned in the songs that we're singing, and we look back at his work knowing that it is our hope rests in his perfect life, death, and resurrection. So there's joy that comes from that. We kind of have to do a hard switch to present suffering and be objective about the reality of our present hardship. And I feel as if I'm a doctor that has to come into the room of a patient and tell them it's not going to get any better. That's how I feel as I come to this text. James offers us immense hope, but it's distant. And to some degree, I come saying the hardship that you're suffering may remain. All of you walk in with something today, with some kind of hardship. As Andy mentioned, there's several of you visiting. We're really thankful that you're here. There's part of me that would love to have a more rousing, encouraging passage to preach to you today. I do believe in God's sovereignty, and we just are working through James, and this is the text that you showed up for. And I pray that it is encouraging to you. But I would have picked something else probably for you. God didn't. I would have. But you walk into, I don't know your life. I don't know the struggle that you have, but I've been in ministry 25 years now, and I know you have it. I don't know anyone that doesn't. That is, I think, one of the hardest things of ministry is actually knowing the hurt that most people are carrying. So if you're sitting there this morning feeling like I am in a heap load of hurt, so is the person next to you and everyone in here. Different. It's different kinds of hardship. It's different kinds of suffering. It's different durations of hardship and suffering, but all of us are dealing with some kind of issue. Some of you are struggling with ongoing physical issues. Some of you are struggling with relational issues, whether it's in your home, with your extended family, at work. Some of you are dealing with severe temptation and sin in your own heart that just seems to be beating you down. Some of you are dealing with the consequences of your life, right? And you're doing your best, but you're like, I'm just wrestling through the consequences of decisions I've made. All of you walk in this morning with hardship and suffering. And typically, we want God to change our circumstances, and often our prayer lives are consumed by, Lord, this is my hardship and suffering. Would you please take it from me? I don't want this anymore. I don't want this broken relationship. I don't want this work frustration. I don't want this physical ailment. I want you to relieve me of it. We want a resolution. We want some kind of manageable answer to the problem that's in front of us. And yet, however, what James does in this passage is he does not offer that kind of hope. In fact, we might be uncomfortable with the hope that he offers, so much so that we may want to look at this text and make it more palatable to us because we don't care for the conclusion that he draws. And yet, what we need to allow God to do through his word and the author of James, let James speak and communicate what he intended to communicate rather than what we want him to communicate. And it's this: amid hardship and suffering, your ultimate hope rests not in present relief. Amid your hardship and suffering, your ultimate hope rests not in present relief, but the distant future return of the Lord. That's in essence what James encourages us with this morning. Remember, in James chapter 1, if you're visiting, I'm going to give you the 3-minute synopsis of James. If you're a regular attender, this is a good review for you. James 1, 26 and 27, in essence, he describes, delineates the three, at least the three that he's giving to this church, these churches, what pure and undefiled religion looks like. Because, verse 18, he's implanted the word into you and transformed you through his word. He desires for you to act in a certain way. What does pure and undefiled religion look like? Verse 26 and 27, and we've broke it up into three things. Basically, compassion to others, life-giving speech, and an avoidance of worldliness. That's verses 26 and 27 of chapter 1. He's going to jump into 27 and he's going to talk about compassion to other people and not showing partiality to others. He spends much of his second chapter in that. In chapter 3, most of the entire first half of chapter 3 is about speech. Instead of having speech that degrades and puts down and discourages and destroys, we should have speech as believers that encourages, lifts up, is life-giving. In the same way that God's word to us is life-giving, our speech to others should be life-giving. Chapter 4 is about avoiding worldliness. And he gives basically three contexts in which we can be worldly. We take on the role of God as judge and start judging everybody, and we need to back off and realize God is the judge. That's the first section of worldliness that he discusses. And then he says we have this tendency in a worldly philosophy to take on God's role as sovereign. Who are we to say, I'm going to do this and this day? I don't have control of tomorrow. I don't have control of today. So I don't have the ability to say, I'm just going to accomplish whatever I want, and I'm going to make this amount of money, and I'm going to go here and go there and do this and that. I'm not sovereign. God is sovereign. A couple weeks ago, we looked at the idea of we at times, in a worldly sense, can take on God's role as provider. And he hones in on rich people at the beginning of chapter 5. And says rich people tend to trust in what they've accumulated instead of trusting God's daily provision. So then the question is, what is the alternative to that? We don't want to be worldly because, verse 18 of chapter 1, God has, through the implanted word, given us life. Therefore, we want to be godly people out of gratitude for what he's done for us. And one of those things is not to be worldly. Okay, so I'm going to try to not take God's role of judge and sovereign and provider. What should I do? And that's the question that James answers in these verses. So the way I'd like to approach this morning, I think this is a very simple passage, to be honest. It's not the most encouraging one that I've come across. It's hard to embrace, but it's not hard to understand. And so I'd like to do it this way. I'd like to ask 4 questions, and that's basically how we'll approach the message today. There's 4 questions that I think will lead us to a helpful, appropriate conclusion James draws for us, which I've given you already, or at least hinted to, and it's up on the screen too. So I want to ask 4 questions, and then you may notice, like, wow, Aaron, you just took a little side note on grumbling. It's purposeful. I planned it. We're going to talk about it. It fits in the context, but we are going to take just a little rabbit trail on the concept of grumbling, and we'll end with a brief consideration of both a present and future hope. Question number 1, what is the command? It's not tough. What is the command in the text? Now, you could argue there are other commands than be patient, but that's definitely the prevailing command in the text. And the other commands undergird really what that looks like. Be patient. The farmer is patient. We should be patient. So, of course, my mind is like, well, what does it mean to be patient? Pull up a couple Greek lexicons. There's a couple nuances that they share that I think are really helpful. I think those are all, Miriam, you can go up, and I think it's the next slide has those, yeah. To remain tranquil while waiting. I think all of us feel conviction already on that one, probably. To bear up under provocation without complaint. Okay? I feel that even more. And Freiberg, in his lexicon, added this, and I thought it was really helpful and mentioned by James. It includes an important component of an element of expectancy. Patience includes an element of expectancy. Now, these two different lexicons really just reinforce what James illustrates. He doesn't so much give us this clear, this is what patience means, as much as he just describes it. And he really does describe those three things in this. And I would see, go ahead and go to that next slide. He gives us this illustration of a farmer, and he says he waits for the precious fruit, which implies what? There's a present hope and a future reality. So patience includes a present hope for a future reality. For instance, a couple, Brian and Paige, had a baby just a few weeks ago. And Paige has been presently hoping, and she has now the baby, right? So she now has that future reality, right? And so for 9 months, she carries this baby, and she knows, like, I can endure. Just tell herself, I can endure, I can do this, I'm going to be sick today, but there's this future hope. There's an expectation of something to come. If there's nothing awaiting you, if there's no expectation of something, then there's no patience. What would I exactly be patient for, right? So there's this expectation. I think a student enters college. Why do they endure tests and the sacrifices that they make and work 3 jobs to pay for their bills and all these things? Why? Because they expect, right or wrong, right, that there's going to be this value at the end of it. A man or a woman, we've had several people in our church lately have physical therapy, and they have an accident or a surgery, and they have physical therapy. Why do they endure these physical therapists and these sessions? Because what? They expect something to be positive at the end of that. All of them assume a future hope. And that future hope fuels patience amid present suffering. So that's one of the aspects of this patience that James is unpacking for us. It has this level of expectation. It also has this, it's established or it's rooted in our hearts. Patience manifests itself in an ongoing, firmly rooted commitment and belief in God's revelation. Specifically, what has God revealed to us according to this text? That Jesus will return. God has promised that. What are we embracing and our hearts are rooted in the future? The return of Jesus Christ. Establish your hearts on his revelation. That's why, in the same way, I just used those illustrations. Why does the person go to physical therapy? Because a doctor who has credibility in their minds told them, if you do this, you will have this. And they have believed that. A college student goes to school because people have told them, if you do this, you will get this. Right? And then he comes and he has this phrase, and to be honest, I think at first glance it seems a little, Verse 8 and 9, you also be patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Don't grumble against one another. Well, James, what are you talking about? Well, let's wrestle first with this, why he wrote this, but then let's talk about this concept of grumbling for a second. In essence, what happens when I'm going through hardship? What does Linda experience? Right? It's the grumbling that comes from the hardship. We're all going through hardship and suffering, and we tend to grumble, and disunity can come as a result of that. And James is cautioning us, in the midst of hardship and suffering, you are going to be overwhelmed by a lot of things, mentally, physically, whatever it might be, emotionally, and you're going to be tempted to grumble. Don't. Now, it's a fair question to ask. Does that mean then I can never share my pain with someone else? So, do not grumble. Interesting word. In essence, it's a non-communicative, what is it when you can't, incomprehensible, Grumbling is just a groan. You know, like, you see someone driving, because this is the one I came right to my mind, some stupid person driving on the road, right? And they do something dumb, and you're like, ugh. That's grumble. Like, if you look in the Greek lexicon, that's grumble. It's just like this, like all of those are grumbling, right? They're not necessarily articulate. They're not saying something. That's the root of this term. It makes me laugh because, like, I do that all the time. Like, okay, Lord, I don't need more conviction. Fine, I'll consider. But what's interesting in this context is it's more than that, because he's saying, do not grumble against one another. And what is one of the three primary elements of James 1, 26 and 27, pure and undefiled religion? Speech. There's a problem we have with speech. And so I think this is more than that guttural vent. This is I'm coming to you and I'm just verbally venting to you. Okay? I think when he's talking about grumbling, this is more than just the spontaneous grunt. This is, I'm going and I'm going to vent to you, and because of that, I'm going to cause division. Right? So the question is, can we never go to someone and share our heartache and our hardship and our suffering with them? And I don't think that's the case at all. Like, as I was wrestling with this, I'm like, well, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. How do I bear your burden if you don't tell me what your burden is? Okay, so we must be able to communicate our hardship to people. That's different than grumbling communicating my hardship to somebody. What's the difference? That's the difference. Let me give you an illustration. Two guys go to coffee at Paradiddles, whatever, it doesn't matter where. They're sitting there, they're sharing their lives. One of them just dumps their week out. Okay? And the other friend is there, and he's listening attentively, and he hears the challenges that are there, and he says, hey, have you ever considered? I don't really want to hear your solutions. Like, what does he want in that moment, this fictional character that I'm saying? He wants sympathy. He wants you to hurt with him, which is on some level we should be doing with one another. But he doesn't really want solutions. He doesn't want wise counsel. He just wants empathy in that moment. Don't potentially tell him a different way of looking at it. Don't tell him he's wrong. That's just dumping. That's grumbling. That's what James, I believe, is referring to. That is different than the other guy sitting across the table, and he's talking to his friend, and he's sharing the similar hardships. It's heavy, it's weighty, and yet what is his demeanor in this? I want to know how to biblically, wisely process this moment. Can you help me think through this? There's a reception to godly, wise counsel. There's a hope for assistance in processing it or offering solutions that might be appropriate. Like, my heart is receptive to counsel. That guy's heart's not receptive to counsel. All he wants is you to just agree with him. He wants someone else in drowning with him. We like drowning with other people. It's fun. Feels better, right? Like jump in the river and drown with me. And over here, it feels like there's this level of superiority, like you're on the outside of the river trying to pull me out. Who do you think you are, right? That, I think, is the difference. If we come, we can share our burdens. And this is a side note to the side note, I guess. There shouldn't be a lot of these people in your life. I've experienced people, it's like they tell everybody all of their burdens. Like, that's not, I don't think, at all what James would encourage, as much as there should be select people in your life who you trust, who have wise counsel, who you bear your burdens with, and they wisely respond to you. That's not grumbling. That's just bearing one another's burdens. So I think it's important that we make this distinction. That's not that bearing one another's burdens is not what James is talking about. He's talking about this grumbling. So in the same way that the lexicons define patience in this three-dimensional kind of way, James illustrates those three dimensions. Wait for precious fruit. So patience is waiting for this future fruit. It's established in my heart based on something God has told me to be true, and I'm not grumbling and dumping my burden on other people, and you carry it too. I wanted to ruin your day also. So that's not what patience is. So patience, let's define it then with this way. Patience is a steady, internal calmness as one waits future realities and endures hardship without complaint. Let me ask you, do any of you struggle with impatience? Yeah, I think we all do. Question 2, how long must I be patient? A while. I'm not trying to be just silly. I mean, it's a while. This is when it started to get real and a little depressing as I struggled through this. What he gives us are amazing moments in our future, but they're in our future. He says, until the coming of the Lord, verse 7. Verse 8, he says, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Which is interesting, isn't it? Because the coming of the Lord at hand makes us feel like, well, like next week? Oh, maybe at the end of your life. Or maybe long after your life ended here, right? This is a while. This is a while. The coming of the Lord at hand, it's at hand for us in the sense that it's the only next momentous scene in God's redemptive story is the coming of Jesus. If you look back at Genesis, they were at the beginning of the story, and the coming of the Lord was not at hand. Right? Abraham's life, the coming of the Lord was not at hand. David, no. Babylonian captivity, no. Jesus comes and like, oh, the coming of the Lord's at hand. No, not quite yet. Like, in one sense, yes. So the next big moment of God's redemptive story is the coming of the Lord. It's the next thing. But in our view here, earthly temporal view, it's a ways off. And I just think we need to be honest and objective about that. So, be patient. Till when? A while. What's a while? When Jesus comes. When is that? Not sure. Either when you die, you'll see him. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Glorious time. Or he will return someday. Maybe this afternoon. Maybe not. It's the next thing, though. Hey, Aaron, question 3, can you offer some examples? Or James, will you offer some examples? Well, yes, he does. He gives us several in these few verses. He says, there's a farmer I want you to consider. There's a prophet that I want you to consider. And there's Job who I would like you to consider. The farmer, he illustrates this present, expectant hope in future realities. I guess I'm answering my next question. What lessons are we to learn from these three? And they go back to the three dimensions of the definition for patience. There's this expectation the farmer has for future fruit. There's something precious in the future. And because I know that that precious thing in the future, the return of the Lord, is a reality, I have present hope in my suffering. The prophets illustrated a settled and confident trust amid hardship. What did they trust? They trusted in God's revealed truths, and they proclaimed them. Our suffering pales in comparison to most of what the prophets suffered. And yet they had this certainty in them. God told us this is true. God will redeem his people. God will send a Messiah. He will redeem all things back to himself. That was settled in their heart. In our hearts, a lot of things are settled, but one should be, from this text, Jesus will return. He's coming back. So we have this unwavering conviction of God's declared truth. And Job, I think, offers an example of steadfast calm. Job loses his possessions, his children, his health in a short time, and yet he does not turn against God. He speaks honestly about his grief and confusion, but he refuses to charge God with wrong. I mean, even his friends criticize him and offer reckless counsel, and his wife's like, just blaspheme God and die. I mean, come on, let's be honest. We should be able to understand that with what he was going through. We can be often very critical of Job's wife, but she did say those things, and in the midst of this, Job refuses to condemn God in any way. He endures the suffering that God allowed into his life with trust. And Job models a steady, composed endurance that holds fast to what God says amidst deep affliction. What is the command? Be patient. How long do I have to be patient? For a while. Who can we look to and what do we learn from them? We look to the farmer who has future expectations. We look to the prophets who are unwavering in their convictions. And we look to Job who is steadfast, calm in the midst of suffering. As I said before, don't make James more palatable. James' presentation, his passage seems, to me, in one sense, it seems bleak. I hope you understand why I say that. It's, of course, the return of Christ is not bleak, but what I'm saying to you, and I think you should have caught this probably, from today until the return of Christ, it might be bad. That's the bleak part that I'm saying. We want a Christianity that, and it is prevalent in our culture and around the world, we want a Christianity that, in essence, we can use God as a genie and be like, God, I'm suffering with this. Will you take it away from me? And he's like, absolutely. And if he doesn't, well, just pray more or do more or sing louder or do whatever you have to. And God will do what? He'll take away your physical ailment. He'll redeem or restore your broken relationships. He'll bring your kids back to you. He'll redeem your broken marriage. He'll fix this issue going on at work. Like that's, I think, what we expect of Christianity. Like, God, you do what I asked for. And James is like, okay, He is addressing your suffering, but he's going to do it in a time that's probably not what you would like. I think early in my ministry, I probably would have counseled people, man, if we can just plug along, it'll get better. I don't know if this is me becoming wiser or more cynical. I don't know. You can judge that and grumble to someone else about it. I don't really want to hear about it. I'm getting more and more trying to think how to help people, like, this may be the reality for the rest of your life. That's hard counsel to give someone. The relationship you have with a certain person, it may never get better. The physical issues that you have today may never get better. Can God do any? Absolutely. There's no question in my mind that God can immediately heal you, immediately redeem a relationship, immediately fix work complications, immediately fix school frustrations. He can do that. He chooses not to. Why? Then we go back to James 1. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you encounter trials of various kinds. Back up, James. Count it all joy when you encounter trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, making you perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. My counsel for you today: you're going through hardship. I know you are. All of you. Different levels, different types, but you're all going through it. And it's possible, and dare I say, likely, that it may last the whole part of your life. No, it depends on what the conflict is. If some of it's you're in high school and you're wrestling with some relational issue, you'll probably graduate and leave and it might be over. I don't know. There's some things like that feel like forever, but they may go away. But there are a lot of things in our life, especially as you get into an adult life, the physical issues that you have, the sin issues that you have, the relational brokenness that you're struggling through, a lot of those things. I'm not trying to be frustrating and discouraging or a jerk to you. I'm just saying objective reality is you may wrestle with it for the rest of your life. That's the truth. So there's a present hope and a future hope. The present hope is James 1. God uses these struggles to craft us into the people he desires us to be. Can we look at the suffering that we're going through and see it as God's work in developing us? That's what James desires for us to do. That's what I desire for you to do. That's our present hope. We look at our present suffering, and God is forming me. A more exciting, a more encouraging, but off in the distance hope is someday I will be absent from the body and present with the Lord. Someday I will be free or absent from this and see the face of Christ. Revelation unfolds. There's two spots in Revelation that grab my attention when I think of this imagery. One is in chapter 5 where John is calling hey, there's supposed to be someone who can break the seals. Is there anyone there? And between the throne comes the Lamb, and all of heaven erupts because one has come who is worthy to open the scrolls, and it's Jesus is standing there. There's a moment when we will see that figure. I'm really excited about that. And then there's Revelation 21, where God walks with his people, and they describe it in such a way as short, 2 verses. I saw a holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven. I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man." Genesis 2 is back. God walks with his people. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. And what happens in verse 4 of Revelation 21? He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. That is our future hope. We have to endure patiently now, knowing God is refining us now, and we have this glorious moment at the second coming of Christ where we will see Christ and be transformed into his image. And that future reality is the precious fruit the farmer waits for. It's the degree the student is waiting for. It's the child that a pregnant woman is waiting for. Like we endure all of this because there's the reality of that. Do you have that settled in your heart today? I know that Jesus is returning, so whatever comes here, I will patiently wait. Be patient. God refines you through present hardship and will ultimately remove you from it when you see Jesus Christ, either at your death or his return. That may not be the counsel, that may not be the encouragement you want this morning. It is the encouragement that James gives us. Lord, we struggle, we are, as humanity and in our culture, we desire, if not demand, immediate solutions. And a solution James offers is like, wait till you die and you'll see Jesus, is a tough one to grab hold of. It is glorious. It is eternal. But it's tough for us. Because some of us will leave this morning and immediately walk into the hardship that we've been experiencing. And we don't want to have to wait for Jesus' return. So this message of James conflicts with our natural humanity. Help us to both embrace your current work in our lives and your future return, producing in us patient endurance. In Jesus' name, amen.